Bravo and Chair of the Economic and Community Development Committee. We have quorum, and I am now calling meeting 28 to order. Welcome, everyone. Today's meeting is being held by video conference and in person at City Hall in Committee Room 1. This meeting is also being live streamed online at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. I want to start by saying that we acknowledge the land in Toronto as a way of showing our obligations. And I want to recognize that this committee acknowledges that these lands that we're on are the ancestral territories of the Anishinaabe, Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat peoples, and also that it's now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also importantly acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and a nation-to-nation agreement. If you are registered to speak at today's meeting, please listen for me to call your name. I will call speakers in the order they appear on the list. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the Economic and Community Development Committee page at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. Members, the City Clerk has provided all agenda materials on toronto.ca/council and CMP, the Clerk's meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff are available to members if you need help with your devices. I also want to remind you to please submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at ecdc@toronto.ca to help with motions. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act at this time? No, seeing none. We will proceed. May I have a motion to confirm the minutes from our meeting on April 9, 2026? Councillor Moise. Moved by Councillor Moise. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And now we will proceed to the agenda review. The first item, EC 28.1, Sidewalks to Skylines, a 10-year action plan for Toronto's economy, update on implementation. Would anyone like to hold that?
Yeah, I'll have a motion on that.
Thank you. EC 28.2, Economic Development and Culture Grants, 2025 Funding Allocation and Museums and Heritage Grants. Would anyone like to hold that? No?
I'll move adoption if there are no holds.
Moved by Councillor Carroll. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. EC 28.3, Riverside District Business Improvement Area Expansion poll results. Would anyone like to hold that? No?
Move adoption.
Move by Councillor Carroll. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Wow. EC 28.4, 2027 Shelter Infrastructure Plan. I'm holding that for a speaker. EC 28.5, Early Local Registration Expansion Update and Outcomes. That's held for speakers. EC 28.6, Access to Outdoor Ovens in Parks Progress Update, and that's held for speaker. So we will proceed to our, oh yes, thank you. That's why I need to have the clerk beside me. This is a new item, EC 28.7, this requires a motion to add as new business, and it's moved by Deputy Mayor Malik. All those in favor of adding it to the agenda? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. And now we will proceed to EC 28.1, Sidewalk to Skylines, a 10-year action plan for Toronto's economy, 2025-2035 update on implementation. Are there any questions of staff? No questions of staff. Oh, Councillor Candeville, you have questions? Okay, anyone else have questions of staff?
I was just hesitating because I thought Councillor, the motion I'm going to be moving is on behalf of Councillor Chang. I thought she was going to log on to ask some questions, but I don't see her logged on.
Well, I'll ask a couple of questions because I know what the motion is, and while people get ready. To economic development and culture, there's a lot of interest in among academics and as a matter of social and economic interest in the realm of data management, data sovereignty, and digital assets, and the levers that we may or may not be able to use as a municipality in relation to what is now considered something as valuable as oil. Are there any comments as to whether there could be a scope in relation to the setting up the motion by Councillor Chang to be able to move something in relation to this this asset and what we could do to leverage it?
To the chair, you're right. Data is an incredibly valuable resource in the knowledge economy and requires proprietary infrastructure that can manage risks around sovereignty and can also build up an industrial base. Councillor Cheng's motion calls on the city to look at its purchasing power, $18 billion operating budget, as a tool by which to help seed and scale domestic software applications for use by municipalities. It is consistent with the objectives, not just in Sidewalks and Skylines, but also particularly in the tariff action plan. And it would need to be balanced certainly with the obligation of the city to taxpayers to procure in a transparent, competitive fashion the most cost-effective solutions possible.
Thanks. I'm not going to move a motion today on this, but I would like to, given the opportunity to talk about digital and software and tech in general, in terms of our objectives in relation to social and economic inequality and writing that, do we need to do work? Is it important to consider the impact of, for example, algorithmic pricing?
To the chair, yes, there's been a lot of work and discussion in this council chamber as well as with the province around consumer protections that would avoid predatory pricing for entertainment, as one recent example. Many of those levers fall outside the control of the municipality, and this council has called upon staff to work with those at the province who control such measures in order to provide greater consumer protection.
And is algorithmic pricing more of a threat to populations that are working, for example, with lower incomes, when we start talking about the pricing of food, the pricing of household essentials, the pricing of things that, you want to buy baby aspirin and you're online and all of a sudden because of your profile, you know that you're going to pay more than someone else. Is there something to explore there around the outcomes in the future?
To the chair, I think working with civil society groups, some of those mentioned in Councillor Cheng's motion, who are encouraging the type of protections around personal data that can inform algorithmic and dynamic pricing models so that people are not disadvantaged in e-commerce in access to essential goods.
And of course, we would need stronger legislation and regulation, as is done in jurisdictions, for example, within the European Union, to protect people and to have sovereignty over their own individual data. So thank you. Are other councillors ready now for your questions? Councillor Canderville, questions of staff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Within the 10-year plan, what's, if any, consideration given to the role strip plazas play in the economic development of, particularly in suburban communities?
To the chair, the taxonomy of built form in the city, where in the inner suburbs, strip plazas are much more common feature than in Toronto and East York. require the city to figure out how best to support them from a planning and taxation standpoint, as well as with community economic development grants, which we've done. Those strip plazas frequently are the site of the first entry into commercial activity for newcomer entrepreneurs and perform a critical function in terms of creating pathways to employment and entrepreneurship. There are efforts to look at how those strip malls could, for example, take advantage of the small business property tax subclass and work with the province to figure out how to best make that happen. The city, I'll close on this, is also active through economic development and culture through grants to community organizations like Plaza Pops working in Wexford to try to support those sites.
I appreciate that overview and approach. In particular, is there any consideration of a development of whether it's a framework, but to revisit a policy that's housed in planning to seek preservation or to de-incentivize or to incentivize the preservation of it within a redevelopment application?
To the chair, I'll pass to my colleagues in planning.
Through the chair, Andrew Farncombe from City Planning. Councillor, the division has undertaken the Plaza POV study, which looks at the role and impact on the loss of strip plazas through redevelopment. And that work is now moving into its next phase, which will help inform a policy response and program initiatives. And among those, we will be examining different policy levers that can be used to reinforce the importance of strip plazas.
Mm-hmm. Do we have a timeline on when that would be coming back?
I think in the Sidewalks to Skylines, that timeline was 2027, our target.
Would that work in relation to the planning impact? Would that come to PHC as a policy amendment or recommendation to seek preservation?
Yeah, through the chair, yes. If we were proposing changes to official plan policy that was citywide, it would go through Planning and Housing Committee.
Mm-hmm. As part of the thinking on that, is there some sense that it could be by district, that what may be suitable for Etobicoke and Scarborough would obviously not be suitable for the East York and the Toronto core?
Through the chair, I think it's a bit early for me to comment on that, but that is a conversation, Councillor, we could have.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And coming back to EDC folks, beyond the clear economic role plazas serve for obviously independent small businesses that are often, as you had mentioned, newcomers or what is the cultural review of the role they play in neighborhood identity?
To the chair, strip malls are critical. I'll call them community hubs that produce social and economic opportunity in the inner suburbs. Academics in Toronto, like David Hulchinski at the University of Toronto, has talked about their function in entrepreneurship development, but also innovation. We work with a series of organizations. We've mentioned Plaza Pops, but have also provided grants to Eat More Scarborough, for example, who are using newcomer entrepreneurs in strip malls with food offerings as a cornerstone of Scarborough's brand and trying to develop a culinary tourism market for Scarborough. So strip malls feature prominently, just to choose one example, in that economic development strategy for Scarborough.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll, questions of staff?
Yes, I do now, because I just want to ask some follow-up questions to that. We have sort of grappled with the issue of how to assist strip malls in the same way we do main streets and high streets. We struggled with how to include them in the small business tax subclass. We sort of have a solution there, but it's dependent on the landowner extending the benefit. Am I right about that? Are we still at that point?
To the chair, that's correct.
Okay. And to be clear, while we're supporting them and where they're thriving, we're helping them thrive and promote them, but it is still also the official plan contemplates that that where they're not thriving, we have to look at where, from a planning perspective, historically, they haven't turned out to be the best planning idea. And so where we can convert to a more Main Street and fronting further front and more engaged with the street, that is still the development guideline going forward. Am I right about that?
To the chair, I'll pass to my colleague Andrew in city planning.
To the chair, thank you, Councillor, for that question. I think our Plaza POV strip study plaza looks at the role of plazas and the policy recommendations in that report look at how we can support existing businesses to help them thrive, how we can enhance the physical experience of the plaza, and perhaps that's what you were getting at in terms of introducing improved public realm, specifically within the parking lots in front. But in particular, how we can mitigate displacement of businesses as new development comes along avenues and near transit hubs.
Right, because, recognizing a different type of street realm, our complete streets guidelines, our development guidelines, et cetera, where we move to a more Main Street oriented profile as opposed to a parking lot with all their retail set back, that is still the future where a plaza is not thriving despite our supports. We're not trying to preserve them in cotton wool is what I'm getting at, where they haven't succeeded.
Right, through the chair, through the Housing Action Plan and the Avenues study work, the council's direction is to pursue mid-rise development and housing, and that would be something that would be more street-oriented without the parking, as you say, towards the front.
Right, but where they are thriving and the community wants to continue on, we do what we can to make sure those businesses succeed. It's that balance.
Through the chair, that's correct, Councillor.
Okay.
City planning would work closely with economic development and culture towards that outcome.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Councillor Moise, questions of staff?
Thank you, and through the chair. I just want to find out more. We know that BIAs are really, plays a really big part in the success of neighborhoods and businesses. Are there steps to increase BIAs across the city as part of this initiative?
To the chair, yes. The plan calls on the creation of a large number of BIAs over a 10-year time frame. I think it's 125. We currently sit at 86. There's a recognition that growth needs to be accompanied by increasing capacity building. There are some issues with the supports provided to BIAs, and so EDC is conscious that it would have to undertake those two actions simultaneously, strengthen the existing network while building towards the greater number of BIAs. And I'd note there are currently about 10, I would say, in the pipeline at various stages of pursuing the steps laid out in Chapter 19 to form a new BIA.
Okay, I'm happy to hear that. And of course, we don't want to leave Indigenous people behind. What steps are being taken to actually help with Indigenous procurement and entrepreneurship in the city around this plan?
To the chair, I'll start and call on my colleagues to may wish to add anything. Indigenous economic development is a significant priority within the plan. And there are three interlocking commitments within the plan. One, stand up an Indigenous Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. 2, convene an Indigenous economic development strategy. And 3, through that convening, produce an Indigenous economic development report. They are sequenced in such a way that the ICIE is just completing its capital work right now, soon to locate an Indigenous operator for the site, and then we would move on the other 2. So we are a little bit delayed on that. In parallel, there's a lot of work with PMMD in order to look at strengthening the social procurement policies in the city, particularly with respect to Indigenous suppliers. And we have, I'll pass to my colleague at PMMD.
Thank you. Chair, so we are currently working on separating the social procurement policy from Indigenous procurement. That work's been going on since about late 2024, and we are coming to committee this term with a first draft of, or with an Indigenous procurement policy that will, with new procurement tools and approaches that will allow us to spend more with Indigenous businesses.
Is it coming back to this committee, and when?
It's going to executive committee in June.
Okay, thank you. That's my questions.
Thank you. And now to speak. Oh, sorry, questions of staff. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Malik.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just building on Councillor Moises' questions, I'm interested to hear a little bit more about the progress being made on the Indigenous procurement policy. Can you share a little bit about where that work is right now?
Chair, we have a draft of the policy that's currently being reviewed with legal services. It was co-developed with an advisory circle of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis procurement professionals, and we've spent about 1.5 years developing that work. It was also informed by national engagement with Indigenous businesses, so we did virtual and in-person engagement with businesses. So the policy is near completion.
And are there other jurisdictions that have policies like this?
Yes, quite a few, and the number is increasing. So we know Regina, Yukon, Northwest Territories, I believe Manitoba and Saskatchewan, and the numbers are increasing.
Thank you very much. My next question is related to what we've been hearing and seeing with our downtown BIAs and our main streets with the increasing number of vacant storefronts, and looking to see how the strong main streets actions support BIAs in animating those vacant spaces to make sure that our streets stay vibrant, and for the businesses that that are still operating, that the streets are welcoming for them and to draw new business.
To the chair, this plan in calling for strong main streets talks a lot about the work through BIAs to try to strengthen the economic vitality and the livability of main streets. One of the key actions that's been completed is the creation of a downtown stewardship alliance. So the big 6 BIAs have come together as the downtown BIA alliance and now provide us one platform by which to deliver city services. I'll use the example of SafeTO BIA, looking at the issues of safety and perceptions of safety in the core. In addition, we've worked with the federal government to successfully secure money to be able to re-grant out to BIAs and through them to support small business for activations, some in vacant storefronts, but mainly throughout the BIA catchments, to include an expanded facade improvement grant program, which post-pandemic we have expanded to take in new expenses that BIAs have forwarded as priorities, such as lighting, safety, et cetera.
And I'm very aware and proud of the work that our downtown BIAs are doing to be better coordinated and to bring together their expertise and strength. The issue of vacant storefronts, though, is a very specific one and one that relates to some of the measures that we've brought forward through the budget to support, the capability for businesses to be on our main streets. It also has to do with landlords and also has to do with some of the cooperative partnerships that I know that the city has tested in the past. So on this specific issue, I'm trying to understand in this Strong Main Streets focus, what does it do to address that issue?
To the chair, the primary means by which we support BIAs to animate vacant storefronts are through the BIA grants supported by the federal government. That has allowed for them to work in partnership with some arts organizations to animate some spaces. The issue persists beyond the scope of that program to be able to fully remedy it. And we have received direction from council and are working with our colleagues at Revenue Services to see if there are other policy levers that the city might be able to use via property tax to try to incent the re-tenanting quickly of vacant storefronts.
Thank you. To speak, Vice Chair Carroll and then Councillor Shan.
Yes, I asked clerks to advance circulate the motion that I'm moving so that it would be in front of you, because it's a bit of a read. This is a motion that Councillor Chang wanted to move, and I was happy to move it for her because she really went about it in the right way. She had this concern, this thought, went to staff to work on making sure that it complements what's before you in the update plan and complements our overall 10-year action plan. And I'm comfortable moving it. The federal government, will welcome this because it's work that they're already in a way starting to do. Their MOU with Cohair to work on initiatives such as this, so that they're working with a Canadian, Toronto, in fact, startup that now has a global footprint, means that they're ready to do this. They're specialists in agentic AI, for which there are 10,000 ways we could use it to make municipal government and municipal life better. And so that sort of work is likely to happen anyway, but this really puts our stamp on it that we want it to be a made in Canada solution. So I'm happy to move this on her behalf. Just a few words on the overall update, Madam Chair, is that I hope people, it's a long read, but it's got a chart at the end if you need it in point form, but I hope people will have a look at it at this juncture, because we are with a half year left. This shows how very strategic and intentional economic development as a division, economic development culture, has been this entire term of office. And it should be underscored that, we in the start with the 2022 term, started the work right away on developing this plan. But it could have fallen by the wayside. But the current administration came in, looked at the work done so far, the business community that was engaging with EDC to get this work done, and the culture groups that were engaging with the culture division of EDC, the C in EDC, to get that done, and said, carry right on. And then the mayor and the administration further engaged in it to get it done so that it could be adopted by council early in the first half of the term. But this is a listing of how very far they've come in doing the work by being really targeted. Also could have been derailed again by the White House. And yet we simply adapted. The mayor asked the division to pivot a little bit so that there was a specific addressing of tariffs to again engage business in it, to make sure that the 10-year plan could align with the kinds of immediate measures we needed to take. Those are all listed here as well. This is a real achievement from a division that does its best to grant out funds to make sure they're animated the organizations out there. And does its best to roll up its sleeves and find the efficiencies when we put pressure on them, which is exactly what happened for this budget year. They're doing a lot with a little, and I just want to thank them all because in my travels, it's not just Mr. Tobin who answers questions on their behalf, but I'll go somewhere and a food business will say, we just love and rely on Eric Wood. I'll meet with a business and they'll say, Mr. Alderdice has been so helpful. We just love Miss Barnett. We love Susanna Vass at Tech Week. The whole division is so animated throughout the community. I have to say, they're not in this building. They're out there in our economy doing exactly what they're supposed to do, which is driving Toronto's economy. And I really just wanted to take this opportunity to thank them for their work in this term. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Oh, sorry. I apologize, Councillor Shan. I'd already said you were number 2. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had raised them as questions at different points as well. Just wanted to first thank the staff for the update and the work that they're doing. I think a couple of points that were made earlier is critical to reinforce. I think, we had conversations about BIA. The model, it's great to see there's an emphasis to expand, and expanding those things to Scarborough would probably need a lot more dedicated focus and support and energy, incubation, and so on, because I know out of 80 something, there's about 5 or 6 maybe now in Scarborough that are BIA. So it is fairly disproportionately low. And even we saw the last item on the agenda, which is about festivals and grants and so on, and a number of BIAs were able to take advantage of those opportunities in that grants the list. And the reason I say that is that these structures then kind of add more resources and they're helpful. We are working as councillors in Scarborough. I'm working on 2 of them in my ward right now, but it is a challenge. That's why I want to emphasize there might be alternative models to BIA as well that could be explored, that needs to be seriously considered. For example, instead of place-based approaches, ethno-specific, geographical, ethno-specific support might be a model. Like, for example, Filipino Community Chamber of Commerce has a Toronto chapter, maybe a Scarborough chapter is an option. Maybe a chapter of, restaurants in Northeast Scarborough, for example, or Lawrence Avenue. I know we have a BIA, but maybe it's a different way of thinking about supporting businesses, because these are, at the end of the day, businesses in Toronto, in Scarborough. So if there's a possibility to explore different models and methods and then incorporate that quickly into this plan. This is a 10-year plan, so we don't want to wait to review it after 10 years. A lot of economic opportunity would be lost in that. So if there was a bit of a rethinking around how we support businesses, how we support restaurants, for example. And I gave an example of Interlicious, for example, 250 plus restaurants participating, and I think I heard 5 of them are from Scarborough. So some of these models are great, they help, but some of them are not applicable, or at least not structured in a way that engages and supports the small businesses in Scarborough. And in order for us to do that, instead of trying to apply some of the existing models to work in these areas, there might be some risk-taking, quote unquote. It's not a significant risk-taking in trying to explore different models. And I know there's at least 20 different chambers of commerce that are geography-based, but also are ethno-specific communities. And when you bring them together, the collective amount of businesses represented through them would be a significant number of businesses that could be brought in. And then just to go on the plaza related stuff, again, there are incentives that we can offer to plazas to be useful and used. But as Deputy Mayor Malik mentioned, there's multiple factors, including some feels like intentionally left unused. And so maybe there's a way for us to figure out a mechanism that can help to revitalize some of these areas. And we can give examples of probably 20 different spots in Scarborough that have significant type of gap in terms of retail spaces as well. So just to reiterate, and I could have asked these in the form of questions, but I know that the staff are working on these, but just the urgency of getting these things done and incorporated as a significant part of this plan would be helpful for Scarborough businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers on this? Councillor Candeville?
Thank you, Chair. To pick up from where Councillor Shan left and the responses from staff, appreciate that this is both not just an economic but also a cultural component of many neighborhoods in our suburbs, and at the root of it is the need to have effective planning tools to preserve the vital and vibrant plazas that provide so much for, in many cases, immigrant communities, but small business entrepreneurs in general, that create that vibrancy, but also intrinsic to Toronto's identity. We say diversity is our strength. Here's a core place that intersects planning, development, review, economic and cultural development in a very specific way. And I'm looking forward to the work that's coming through planning specifically to create the tools and the wherewithal to preserve these very vibrant spaces. And as some development happens that is around transit, that does certainly necessitate us to see density around high-order transit in many parts of our suburbs. The reality of those that are vibrant and vital are predicated around the car, and I think that's central to understanding the value of these plazas and strip malls, and I could really only speak to Scarborough's experience, is the reality for many small businesses, if they're restaurateurs or whatnot, the reality is people pull up into these strip plazas to their car. So I think part and central to the planning review of this obviously sensitive and layered idea requires us to understand the reality of, I feel dependency is not the right word, but moreover, the reality, the vehicle, the car, automobile provides to many families and customers that partake in the success and contribute to the financial and fiscal viability of strip plazas needs to be understood. That for many small businesses, the two things, the lack of parking or accessible parking, and number two, the change in the rents that caters to more corporate businesses like franchisees, really changes the dynamic and culture from going from traditionally small business, independently owned places to corporate franchises. I think is part of the bigger discussion that we hear and often see in Toronto's the discourse around Toronto. What Toronto was 25 years ago to now, I think that's not unique to any region or district in our city, but throughout is this corporatization. So I think as planning has rightfully done, look to enshrine the culture and economic development as part of good planning, development review. I think ultimately we need the policy planning tools from PHC to give the teeth as we proceed with the growth of our city. And I'll leave it at, and as we're all versed with the reality of the market, the real estate market right now, what we've seen is many plazas, the ownership sitting on rights, but not moving on development, which creates uncertainty with the existing clientele in these strip plazas that gives anxiety to the future viability, because that uncertainty prevents them from making the investments to put in deeper roots in that community, in that plaza. So I think that's an important perspective, and the long-term impact that the decisions we make both here at PHC and at community councils have on these small business entrepreneurs, and hence the value of the work that's coming to PHC. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Moyes to speak.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy Pat would mention Plaza Pops. I know that file intimately. I worked with Jennifer and Brandon, researchers from Guelph University on Plaza Pops, and we actually took a trip to Copenhagen 2 years ago and highlighted Plaza Pops and the benefits of it. And so I'm happy to see that it's still being implemented, not only in Scarborough, but in Etobicoke and elsewhere in the city. Hopefully replicated across the country as well. Again, to Councillor Canterville's point, Plaza Pops were placed in communities where new immigrants didn't really have an opportunity to integrate and socialize with their communities, and Plaza Pops allows them to come out onto these strip plazas and actually interact with their neighbors. And there's been a lot of research around that, and it's been great. Initially, also too, I really think that BIAs are such an important part of this file. I have 6 BIAs in my ward, and they're all very vibrant and so very supportive of local businesses. And I'm happy to see that the plan here is to actually increase BIAs across the city. There's value in that, and so I really support that aspect of the file here. And lastly, the Indigenous piece, we can't forget that. Since I've been a councillor, that's something that I've been really front and center in supporting the Indigenous community on. The Indigenous Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship is actually in my ward over at Dundas and Parliament. So we're waiting with bated breath for that to finally open. I know the entire Indigenous community is looking forward to that. And so whatever steps need to be taken, let's make sure that that happens sooner rather than later. Thank you very much.
Any other speakers on this? Okay. I will just speak to, I want to credit economic development staff for the excellent work that's come forward. As the Vice Chair, Carol, who championed this work, has indicated, this has been a long and exhaustive effort with significant consultation to generate this plan, to be ready for threats and opportunities. And as the Vice Chair said, Mayor Chow's really sunk her teeth into this, and it's good news to have a plan to adapt. We've faced in Canada, and Toronto has not been exempt, a significant threat from our neighbor to the south, but we are moving through it, and I think that's terrific. The updates bring good news. So many of the directives, the directions, the priorities are being acted on. And as Councillor Moy said, the important work to strengthen, to find a way to do real procurement from Indigenous-owned businesses and organizations is something that's going to be transformative, and I think gives real material life to our Reconciliation Action Plan. So congratulations for all of the work on that. We all look forward to it. This came forward in the same year as the culture plan as well, and so we recognize the importance of culture and cultural workers. And it also came with the direction to create an inclusive economic development plan, and we adopted it at the last meeting. So it will be reporting every time the action plan for Toronto's economy reports, and now we have indicators to show not only that the pie is growing, but that the share of, whether or not the share of the wealth is going to be in community and is reducing inequality, economic inequality. The plan also is crucial for clarifying the city's position on land use. One of the most important things that we do at the municipal level is land use planning. And the strategic centering of the protection of employment lands amounts to ensuring that we are able to protect the sectors where jobs are and jobs may come. For example, the film industry. But much more. If we are to move beyond only being branch plant to the U.S. economy and have more trading partners, and if we're able to protect our own future, for example, by being able to produce medicines or vaccinations and when there's a pandemic, we will be in a better position. So this is really the jobs belt. And it, I think, sends very important directives to council about the conversion of employment lands and the priority to protect them so that we never continue to dip again much below the 15% threshold, which we understand from staff is what we need. So I think this is excellent news, excellent work from staff. And thank you to the Vice Chair Carol for all of her work on that, and the Mayor's Office for all the support. I think we have good news today about how Toronto is positioning itself, its residents, the businesses that are based here, and all of the workers that rely on this economy to live a good life. I will also be supporting Councillor Cheng's motion, moved by the Vice Chair. I think it sets us up for important conversations about an aspect of the economy that we need to get a real handle on, which is our data, which is commodified and used and can be a real source of economic value with the appropriate social guardrails and governance guardrails. So this is great, a great day, I think, for Toronto, and I look forward to the adoption of this report.
Can I make a correction? The Indigenous Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship is actually on Dundas at Jarvis, not Parliament.
No, that is a very short block,
Yes.
a number of blocks, so we will forgive that. And I appreciate that you are so knowledgeable about the home addresses of your ward has so many organizations. So thank you for that. So on the motion moved by Councillor Carroll. Just going to wait to display that. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And on the item as amended, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And now we are going to move on to EC 28.4, 2027 Shelter Infrastructure Plan. We have two speakers on the item, and the first speaker is Andreas Kalogianidis, and welcome to committee. Not online? Okay, we're going to go to our second speaker, and then we can call the first speaker once we're done. The second speaker is Daniel Tate. Welcome to committee. You have 5 minutes.
Good morning. Some quick fast facts about Toronto Shelter and Support Services. The 2023 budget was $707 million, 2024, $787, 2025, $898 million, and 2026, $786 million. I don't know where the chair's going. Total 4-year operating budget is $3.2 billion over the last 4 years for Toronto Shelter and Support Services, a multi-billion-dollar year-over-year division. With that kind of money, you would think we would have solved homelessness by now, but no, it's getting worse. Just take a look outside. I'm not saying there is a profit motive at play here, even though a myriad of companies enjoy lucrative contracts to keep the homeless industry alive. Because if homelessness dried up tomorrow, so would the never-ending trough of taxpayer money. So would your jobs. So what exactly is the success criteria? For example, taxpayers were mortified to learn that the people in this room awarded $300 million of our money in sole source contracts alone. No competition, no price comparisons, no accountability. Of note, the TSSS bureaucracy is also one of the biggest at the city, employing over 1,500 people. If TSSS was a private sector corporation, it would be similarly sized to companies like Indigo, Crocs, and GoPro. Now on to the shelter infrastructure plan. The report says we have 20 new shelters coming online, representing 1,600 beds. That's 80 beds per shelter. Total capital cost, $675 million. That's $421,875 per bed. I repeat, $421,875 per bed, more expensive than market housing. Where is this $675 million coming from? Is it coming from debt? And if so, what is the cost of borrowing on that debt? And what is the repayment plan? Regarding operations, I see there's 3 streams of operators: general, Black, and Indigenous. Why are seniors and women being lumped into the general stream? Do they not have unique needs also? Why is there no shelter stream for the most important group of all, the drug addicted? Shouldn't they be in a separate, highly secure environment away from those who are not actively abusing fentanyl, meth, or crack with their city-issued supplies? And maybe those who are not using drugs want to feel safe in the city's shelter system. Many do not. Regarding the design, I see these new shelters will follow the Shelter Design and Technical Guidelines Guide, which calls for, and I quote, anti-heteronormative design, including gender-neutral washrooms. Who thought it was a good idea to mix vulnerable men and women into the same gender-neutral space? Maybe women would appreciate the security of gendered bathrooms. Now, regarding harm reduction, according to your shelter design document, harm reduction supplies and supports should be, quote, readily available and easily accessible. Does that mean someone will be going bed to bed in the morning handing out crack pipes, needles, and tourniquets like Cheerios? Will you have advanced fire sprinklers for when a fentanyl user lights up their blowtorch for a morning smoke? I see exactly 0 references to abstinence, drug detox, or rehab in any of the shelter documents. The drug dealers are going to have a field day. Who's going to explain to the parents of all the nearby daycare centers, parks, and schools that their children will be playing mere meters away from shelters that are handing out meth pipes like candy? Will Mr. Tanner write the statement when someone inevitably gets injured or killed, or will that be delegated to staff? The bottom line is TSSS and its shelter plan is one of the biggest line items in the city's budget, has consumed billions of taxpayer money, has demonstrated no success criteria in solving homelessness, enriches a vast matrix of people and companies, and makes not a single mention of the predominant factor that causes homelessness in the first place, drug addiction. So the question remains, are we getting value for money for this multi-billion-dollar city division? Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Are there any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, we'll call the first deputant on the list one more time. Andreas Kalajanidis. Still not online. Are there any questions of staff on this item? Councillor Canterville? And, sorry, we're going to go to visiting Councillor Holiday first. Please go ahead, Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question to staff is, can you just confirm that you're partway through the process or the list of siting shelters? I think there are 20 on the plan, and you're partway through it right now. Is that correct?
To you, Chair, that's correct. We've cited 11 of the 20 shelters to date.
Mr. Tanner, can you tell me a little bit about how you choose the location? What criteria do you use?
So to you, Chair, I'll pass this to our real estate colleagues, if you don't mind to answer the question.
To you, Madam Speaker, and to Councillor Hawley, it's Pat Matozzo. Councillor, first and foremost, we work with TSSS to determine what their program requirements are with respect to location, bus service, what type of services will be in the area, and based on that criteria, we will work with brokers in the city and our own staff to find locations that suit the program needs.
Mr. Matozzo, so there's two parts, I think, to what I heard from you. One half has to do with what goes inside the shelter. And I think I understand that as program requirements.
That is correct.
The second thing you asked or mentioned, and I'd like to ask about, is what's in the area. And can you tell me a little bit about the specifications that come forward about the area around the shelter that drives the selection of the real estate site?
To Madam Chair, to Councillor Hall, that's really driven by TSSS in terms of they're looking for other services, ancillary services, to actually support the shelter. It's not necessarily on, from a location perspective, we're looking for transportation and things of that nature to make it easy to get to the shelter, but in terms of specific services that are complementary to the shelter, that would be shelter to respond to.
Thank you. That is what I'm interested in. If someone could elaborate on that, please.
Yes, so to you, Chair, Gord here from Toronto Shelter and Support Services. When we're looking at this capital plan for 20 new shelters, part of the goal is to locate these facilities right across neighborhoods throughout Toronto. They are zoned a residential purpose, so we are looking predominantly in residential neighborhoods throughout the city for where we site the locations. As was mentioned, transportation is very key so that individuals using the site can access transit to get to a whole range of different community services and other supports. And we will bring a range of supports directly into the shelter, for example, access to primary care, mental health supports, and other things as well.
So I want to go a little further on what you said. You said that you look for residential areas. I think everyone understands that. Those are prevalent across the city, as is the transit network. But does TSS go a little deeper and look at the amenities that are available in the neighborhoods? And amenities is a broad term. They could be public amenities such as parks, schools, community centers, but they could be simple everyday things that represent a basket of services that, whether you're in a shelter or in another residence in the neighborhood, you need as a human being. So, you know, that could be shopping, that could be professional services, medical, etc. And especially services that would be of higher importance to the people living in the shelter. Is there a planning matrix or a list that is used, and can you elaborate on that? Or does the city not do that and just find sites wherever they get them?
So to you, Chair, with respect to the 11 sites that are before us in this report and that we're reporting out on, you know, we landed on those after a pretty extensive search across the city of more than 300 properties. There is not, to answer your question, a matrix that we would score a particular property on by virtue of its proximity to a range of other social supports, libraries, community centers, etc. As mentioned, you know, we bring all of the wraparound supports into these locations, whether it's nutrition, whether it's support, whether it's healthcare. The goal really is to have people move through these services as quickly as possible and into permanent housing. So transit is the key aspect here.
Thank you. Questions of staff? Councillor Kennebell?
Can staff outline what success looks like under this program?
So to you, Chair, the The project was established to site 20 new shelters, up to 1,600 beds across our system, to allow the city to exit very large shelter hotel programs that were established, many of which were established during the pandemic. So there is a cost factor here that is significant. Once fully
Sorry, I should have been more specific in terms of once the shelters have been built and implemented.
So a successful shelter seeks to have individuals move through its doors from experiencing homelessness at the front end, and once they're leaving, within a reasonable amount of time, into permanent housing with supports where they can be successful. We want to see high quality standards, so the programs need to adhere to our Toronto shelter standards, which are published and available widely. And we want these sites to be good neighbors to the communities in which they are sited.
So the experience by the community, the neighbors, as part of the success of how we define it?
That's correct.
And in regards to the clientele selection for the shelters, can you explain the selection process and the criteria used by staff to select family at Buttonwood, mixed adult at Gerrard? What was the criteria in clientele selection?
So first off, we look at the population we have in these shelter hotel programs, and we need to be building to match the priority populations that we serve. So predominantly, we're looking at a majority of folks in our shelter system are adults, men, women, folks who are trans, and those are the folks that primarily we are housing in the programs. There might be a built form. So example, at Buttonwood, as you mentioned, was a built form that lends itself to support families. So that is a family program going.
But isn't that contingent on the design and layout of the shelter that we decide?
You're right. If we are planning for a mixed adult population, as we are at 2535 Gerrard, we are designing the building appropriately to meet the needs of that adult population.
So perhaps I didn't articulate the question. How did you decide which clientele goes to which shelter? So like, why did Young and Shepherd get Indigenous women versus youth at Dufferin Street? How did you match a clientele to a shelter?
So to you, Chair, with this project, we need, for the most part, adult beds across the system. And that will be the majority of programs that we open. We look at each one of these locations. We run an expression of interest for shelter operators and match a shelter operator to a site. Again, in the case of the Gerrard site in your ward, we have Warden Woods selected to operate a adult program for mixed adults.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Just to get a clear answer, is there a criteria or matrix that matches site to clientele? If there isn't one, that's fine. I just want to get clarity on that.
To Chair, no, I wouldn't say there's a matrix to extrapolate population to particular shelter site. We know the population we're serving in the shelter hotels, again, which we're trying to exit, is for the most part adults of all genders.
Mm-hmm. So as part of council's delegated authority, was that selection criteria indicated to be arbitrary at the discretion of staff in terms of matching clientele to site?
To you, Chair, I don't believe it's part of the delegated authority. This is an operational decision that's made to match the demand for people who are homeless to the shelter programs that we are building, and that is what we're doing in this case.
Mm-hmm. And to build on that, as part of that operational piece, is that at the discretion of staff to select the clientele?
To the Chair, that is what we have done with respect to the sites that have been brought before you in this annual report.
Mm-hmm. Is there any publicly available material that demonstrates the thinking of staff in their decision to match clientele to
That's
sites?
the last question.
So to you, Chair, on a daily basis, we publish our shelter occupancy numbers. They would dictate every day that the majority of people that we see in the shelter system are adults. The majority of people we're trying to decant from shelter hotels are adults of all genders, and that will be the basis upon which we open the majority of these shelters.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Moise, questions of staff.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. I know we're talking about shelter infrastructure, and if my questions are not on the topic, please let me know. So, since the pandemic, we had a lot of hotel shelters in the city, and I believe you've taken tremendous steps to actually reduce that. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit about that as well? And also talk about maybe about the refugees in our shelters and how we've had to go through the process of, at one point, 53% of the people in our shelters were refugees and asylum seekers, and perhaps where we are today and how it's is now.
So to you, Chair, in the pandemic, the city moved very quickly, frankly, to save lives and achieve physical distancing across the shelter system. We moved thousands of people into what were at the time empty buildings and leased those buildings. At its height, we had 29 properties across the city. Coming out of the pandemic and borders reopened, we saw tens of thousands of refugee claimants arriving in Toronto in need of immediate shelter. We transitioned some of the locations by population from serving, others to refugee claimants over that period. We are now in a place where we're contracting the system. We're down to 16 of those 29 properties, with the plan to close 2 more this year.
And homelessness in our city, do you find that it's on the decline as a result of our efforts? Maybe you can speak to perhaps, I just saw when I read this, I think we housed 5,000 people in 2025.
So to you, Chair, we housed about 4,750 people directly from the shelter system, another 360 people directly from the street. We've included in this report an update on the total number of people experiencing homelessness in the city. So from October 24 to October 25, we've seen a drop of about 21%. Again, that's most directly connected to the number of people leaving shelters and moving into permanent housing.
And would you consider that to be a success?
To you, Chair, this is a successful metric for us. It's something that we track very closely, and will continue to do so throughout this year into next.
And I know sometimes in Toronto we kind of live in the bubble, Toronto-centric. But homelessness, is this unique to Toronto, or is it across the province, the country? And I sit on FCM and on AMO. I go into various communities across the country, and all the councillors and mayors I speak to talk to me about the increase in homelessness in their small communities. Can you maybe talk about that a little bit?
So to you, Chair, there are a series of studies, one done by the Association of Municipalities of Ontario recently on the increasing number of people experiencing homelessness across communities, rural, urban, in the province. I'm happy to report that our numbers are actually moving in a different direction as opposed to that trend, but you're right, this is an issue that is across the province and right across the country that is a priority for most civic governments and leaders.
And just one final question. Do you find that other municipalities who are struggling are looking to Toronto for some guidance as to how we're dealing with our situation here?
To you, Chair, we are in touch with many other jurisdictions about the work that's happening in Toronto and take those opportunities to share what's working. We're also often looking at other innovative solutions and programs elsewhere to replicate here in the city as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Questions of staff? Councillor Carroll.
Yes, I want to go back to the concept of what does success look like? Because I think we have a tendency to just look at the last couple of years, but we actually had an idea of success for this infrastructure plan. We actually have to go back pre-pandemic. We had goals to change the way we serve people all the way back in 2017 when we adopted the first iteration of this plan. We're still trying to get to those measures of success, are we not? Moving out of the large congregated shelters, we decided on a new sort of maximum amount based on what we know about the whole industry sector of sheltering. We're still trying to achieve those goals as well, am I right?
To the chair, you're right, Councillor.
Okay, so it's about, if we go back to those times, it's about getting out of having everybody congregated in one large place, you know, the old Seton Street model, where we were also cognizant of too many of the city's homeless congregated in two wards. Do we still have that situation where there are two downtown wards housing, what is it, 70% of all the homeless people?
So to the chair, still we see a concentration of these services in the downtown core. Part of the council direction on this project was to seek and open new facilities right across communities in Toronto to better support people in their local community if they experienced homelessness.
Right. And so we set those goals way back in 2017, but now we have to add to that an increased number of homeless, which is, as Councillor Moyse points out, proportional to what's happening across the country and indeed around the globe. So we have an increased number. We also have the added challenge of having moved some into hotels, we now have to, in a humane way and by building out the infrastructure plan, get out of those hotels, especially where they're too large. So those are layered on top of our 2017 goals. Am I right?
To you, Chair, that's correct.
But meeting them all takes us to what was our original intent, to make smaller, more neighborhood, easier to serve, better to do the quality case management that gets people moving on to housing. We still have those goals. We've just layered on getting out of our COVID situation as well. But we still want to be spread out a little further across the city where there's an opportunity to access schools for the family shelters, an opportunity to be living in a good neighborhood setting, and so on and so forth. I'm right about that.
To you, Chair, that's correct.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Other questions of staff? I have a couple of questions. So going back to Association of Municipalities of Ontario, is it accurate to say that while the estimation in that report that you mentioned was 80,000 people homeless in Ontario, the warning from AMO was that if we didn't do something within 10 years, that number would go to 300,000?
To you, Chair, that's correct. That's the report I was quoting.
And that's indicative of the trend across municipalities?
It's correct.
Okay. So can you put us in the picture then of where we are today on homelessness? I know that we do a point-in-time survey, which we rely on in the federal government mandates. And can you compare, for example, 2025 to 2024 in terms of numbers of where we are around homelessness?
So to you, Chair, the point-in-time assessment required by the federal government saw us have 12,196 people experiencing homelessness in 2025. And in 2024, October, same month, 15,418. So we've seen a 21% decrease, and that includes people in our shelter system, estimates of the number of people living outdoors, and folks that are in provincially run systems, corrections, healthcare, treatment centers, et cetera.
Wow, 21% decrease, breaking the trend that is being experienced across municipalities in Ontario. Can you put us in the picture of where we are in terms of the numbers of people in encampments, the numbers of encampments across the city, and how that might compare not just to recent years, but a trend over time and over a number of years?
So to you, Chair, and as a result of tremendous interdivisional coordination with our colleagues in parks, transportation, solid waste, and other places, we were tracking over 500 encampments in the fall of 2024. And as of today, we're sitting in around 85. So, tremendous outcome from a lot of very collaborative work across the city and with our community partners.
It's actually staggering success, and I think for any one of us who have had encampments, and I think every single councillor would know that it's been very important to communities. In terms of where we are, in terms of where the population homelessness is increasing, is it accurate to say that it's not in the old city of Toronto right now, but outside of the old city of Toronto? And can you comment specifically which areas of the city are experiencing the increases in homelessness?
So, Chair, in the 2025 October count, our outreach teams estimated that we were seeing increases in outdoor homelessness in Etobicoke, York, and in North York. So those were two areas of focus.
So this is where people are becoming homeless increasingly. That's an important thing to remember in terms of where services are needed. In terms of the question about your mandate and your measure of success is to offer the shelter services that allow people to get back inside. But would it be accurate to say that today the success that we're experiencing with a 21% decline in the numbers of people who are homeless in a point-in-time survey, the just staggering reduction in encampments, that more is being done in the city to prevent homelessness through eviction prevention, the rent bank, more support for tenants to understand their rights, the rent eviction bylaw, et cetera. The work that you're doing within the Toronto Shelter Services and Supports to improve shelters and move people more quickly through them, and finding more success, and then the 5,000 units of housing that people were able to enter for a permanent home. Is this what success looks like in the City of Toronto?
So to you, Chair, those are all metrics that demonstrate success that we're experiencing. But there's more work to do. But these learnings, I think, we need to unpack and understand what's working well and do more of what's working well to keep the momentum of people leaving homelessness and getting into housing with support.
And I'll sneak in one last question under the wire. In terms of one of the deputies spoke about referenced healthcare needs, mental health needs, and addictions recovery needs. Is healthcare and all of this suite of services that involves mental health and addiction recovery, is that actually a municipal responsibility, or would that be the purview of the Ministry of Health at the provincial government?
So to you, Chair, those are provincial jurisdictions.
Right, so hopefully people will go and speak to the province. Thank you. So now that we're done speaking on the item, oh, sorry. I should have gone, I didn't see your hand, Councillor Holiday. You should have spoken first.
Well, I can go again for questions, but I would like to speak.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm thankful for the opportunity to come before the committee. Many committee members would know that there is a shelter at 3838 Bloor in Etobicoke Centre, and I want to report to you that it has not gone well. This shelter was announced almost a year ago, and it takes some time for word to spread through the community. And recently we had a meeting to discuss planning changes, a public meeting, and that was a flashpoint. And it goes back to a lot of the questions that I asked at the beginning of this item about how the city explains choices that it made to siting a shelter and whether or not it looks at what's available within the neighborhood. As many people know in real estate, location, location, location is everything. And if the people that are going to be living in the shelter are the most vulnerable, face the most barriers, and have the least amount of mobility in the city, then they need to be close to things that are important to them during the day and all day long. Otherwise, it simply becomes a place to go and sleep. And Mr. Tanner did say accurately that, you know, the city does bring in a lot of services to look after the people in the shelters, but then it starts to become a self-contained building. And if you expect the community to accept something like that rather than something integrated, if you have a process that tells them instead of asks them, I think you set up for conflict right from day one. And that's what I've observed. And I urge this committee, because this item is within your control, that there are opportunities for improvement through all of this process. In cases where the city has to redevelop the site, for instance, make a bigger building or construct something, why would you not want to talk to the community as you would with any sort of process? And it puts the city in a conflict. If we're both the developers, in other words, we've purchased a site and have a financial interest, then why would the community trust us to also be the decision makers? You know, City Council took a tact to delegate certain authorities to staff. There's nothing that says that staff can't go out and consult. In fact, we don't want them to run amok and just do things as they choose. They have to involve a process. And we as council, despite a delegation, do not escape accountability in these matters. And that's why these are so important. And that's why I continue to hear from people that many who may have different views about how the city approaches the shelter system, and some may even agree with the shelter infrastructure plan, still aren't confident in the city's choice at the particular location at 3838 Bloor because of other concerns that they have about the site. One thing that came up in today's conversation, and I'm really glad that it did, but I'd offer a different lens, is what success looks like. And I think this has come up in the meetings and the discussions with the community about 3838 Bloor. Now, some of the conversation of the committee has been macro in nature about what success looks like for the shelter system, but I would suggest you cast your gaze to the actual site level and request that conversations be had with the community about what a successful shelter is. Yes, successful shelters look after the clients or the residents that live within them and look after their needs, but also they create an opportunity for people to move through the shelter system and move to more stable housing and make changes in their life that result in a more stable situation. Those are definitely measurable, and those are things that can be conveyed to the public about what the shelter does and how we know it's working well. There are also success factors about the particular site and whether or not the shelter is operating well and is being managed well. And all of those create transparency, which is something that has been lacking in all of this system. I think these things are very easy to fix. We just have to have the political will to do so. But, you know, if you have anyone, whether it's the city or an operator managing one of these sites over the long term, and we have 20 of them, we should define what success looks like and how we're going to measure it, because as we've heard many times over, managing these contracts and managing these services from a council point of view and an accountability point of view is essential. And I hope that the committee will think about that. And I appreciate the opportunity to provide these observations to you.
Thank you, Councillor. To speak, Councillor Candeville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the work by staff for throughout this process. It's obviously incredibly difficult, hard work with tremendous number of layers, sensitivity, working with, you know, a very, I guess, problematic hotel strategy and that transition, there's absolutely no question. Let me be clear, as many of us have been, there is absolutely no question building more shelters is imperative, and building them throughout our city is imperative. That is incredibly clear, and in my ward, we're very attuned to these sensitivities. In fact, Scarborough Southwest has the most shelters of any suburban ward. We have 2 men's shelters, 2 youth, 1 supported housing, which has folks that are leaving addiction, if that's the right word. This December, we're proud to open Ontario's first and Canada's second home for Indigenous women called the Thunder Women Healing Lodge for women leaving incarceration. We've got tremendous experience with seeing success. Which is critical to not just obviously the community, but to the future clients and us as a city. And part of that is ensuring there's consultation and the incorporation of it that determines the success and failure, and part of this conversation is it's imperative that we don't fall into a binary or a polarized discussion on how we find success, that we need to understand that we could be doing certain things right, like site selection, but we're seeing gaps in how client selection, for example, is happening or not happening. And that was very clear in today's discussion, that there isn't a prescribed criteria, set of decision matrix that matches the right client with the right site. And that's concerning. And the examples I referenced in my question didn't get the appropriate context. For example, why Councillor Cheng's ward at Yonge and Shepherd has an Indigenous women's shelter, when arguably it would make more sense in my ward, being very close to the opening of the Thunder Women's Healing Lodge. There's ability to create synergy between matching sites. The fact that certain sites are closer to higher order transit, more amenity, more healthcare services would necessitate a clientele that requires higher needs to be closer to services and amenities that can match those needs. And that's the concerning aspect of this report, and where we need to do more work. This is hard work, as I stated and shared at the start, that there has to be more clear criteria that explains the rationale behind decisions that match a clientele, whether it's youth, family, seniors, mixed adult, to a certain site. And in the absence of that criteria and clarity, one can only conclude that it's arbitrary. And this is a gap in our system. And the purpose of committee and the work we do here is to improve our system. The goals were unanimous, and there's consensus on to build more shelters across our city. It's the how that requires us to be diligent, to refuse to go into polarized camps on how this proceeds, and to review our assumptions into how these decisions are being made. And that's the certain concern. Coming back to the shelter of mixed adults in my ward, there is, without going into detail, a daycare and a cafe that's within walking distance. And this is why I implore that we develop a necessary set of criteria that makes it very simple for citizens, neighbors, clients themselves, and service providers to the context and rationale for why and how clients are matched to certain sites. And to close, I'd like to again thank the hard work from all those involved to move this forward, but we need to recognize the gaps in how we present our decisions to the public and to the communities that will be hosting these shelters. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other speakers? I will briefly say that one element that I think we need to highlight here in terms of the public interest is that this capital plan is about value for money. In many ways, it's value for money for people who are homeless and are going to have better life outcomes, and we're definitely seeing that that's the goal with new units of housing coming on stream for people to be housing ready, supported, with employment supports, with all of the enabling conditions so that they can have a good life in the City of Toronto. It's value for money for the Toronto taxpayer. We're reducing the cost of sheltering people, and it's value for money to have people inside because it's the only way that people will be well. The number one prescription for any ailment in society is a roof over your head, and this is what we're doing in the City of Toronto, preventing homelessness, in providing better suitable, scoped shelters that have an intentional population that's being served. The population will be spread across the city and nestled within neighborhoods and communities because everybody needs access to transit, a local library, a place to settle in before moving into a permanent home. We would love to get out of the business of having Canada's largest shelter system. But while we have the failures of 30 years of a lack of real investment in building affordable housing, we are contending in the best possible way here in the City of Toronto and being approached by municipalities, not just in Canada, but there's interest globally in the work that's being done here to meet the demand, meet the moment, meet the crisis, not by following the trend in which the homeless population increases, and you've heard the Association of Municipalities of Ontario warn that if we didn't do something differently, we would be at 300,000 homeless people in Ontario from 80,000. But what this shelter division has done and what the systems that have been put in place through the Housing Secretariat on eviction prevention, support, better shelters, and new units of affordable housing means that we are seeing success, a 21% reduction in homelessness in Toronto between 2024 and 2025, and a massive number of reductions in encampments. So this is a good news story and an opportunity for us to move ahead with plans to ensure that we're addressing one of the greatest social and economic threats for the population of the City of Toronto. On that, I will move the item vote to receive. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And we will move on to the next item, which is EC 28.5 Early Local Registration Expansion Update and Outcomes. And we have 4 speakers here. First, I'll call Adam Rogers. Adam?
Sorry, mute is always a bit of an issue.
Welcome to committee. Adam, you have 5 minutes to speak.
Perfect. I won't take 5 minutes. I just wanted to jump on here because you don't really get many opportunities to sing the praises of a certain program, so I wanted to do that right now. So just, I'll get it right, short and sweet. So I'm a resident of Islington City Centre West in South Etobicoke. And my child is a frequent user of community programming at Islington Junior Middle School. And I have to say that I think it's pretty much universal that all folks in the community have greatly benefited from this early registration. I say for my own daughter, the advantage to be able to have have programming with kids in her own community is a huge advantage. It really helps keep that community spirit, which is already fostered very well at the school itself. There's a really strong push for community nature, as well as I might as well shout out the Maybell Arts group as well. So there's been a big, strong push in the community, Islington community, for these developments, and I think this early registration is a part of that. So the only things I would mention is just it might be helpful for the staff to review if there's any need to target in-person registration for seniors who might not have access to a computer or smartphone. I think most parents that I interact with don't have necessarily a problem doing this registration, but that might be an area to think about. And one other thing to think about is perhaps the organization, the people running this can partner with the TDSB to send out surveys to confirm what the uptake is across socioeconomic brackets. If they do these surveys, it can give maybe a little bit of data as are we fully hitting what our targets are? And last, I just wanted to land off by singing the praises of the team who run the programming at Islington Junior Middle School. They're all fantastic, and they don't get enough praise. So I just want, since I'm here, I want to say they're great, and I'm sure that's reflected on everyone in the programming across Toronto. But I can only speak to the ones that I have direct access to, and I'm really happy the city did this initiative. It's great to have that my daughter can continue to have classes with people that she knows and interacts with on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the deputant? No, I'm sure staff will pass on those props. We're going to go to the next speaker, Marianne Scott. Is Marianne Scott here? Oh, hi there. Thank you. Welcome to committee. You have 5 minutes. Make sure you press the button and that it's green.
There we go. It's green now. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Marianne Scott, and I'm a part of Access to Recreation. Access to Recreation initiated the need for priority registration about 8 years ago for our community in Regent Park. When revitalization brought in new infrastructure, which brought other communities using our free programs, which took hundreds of spots of programming away from our children. With the implementation of early local registration across the city, it will allow equitable access for recreational programs for children and adults who have to use this free programming. My family has benefited from parks and recreation programs since they were infants. All 6 of my children have been and still are involved in athletics, and it's because of parks and recreation that this was possible. This is where their love of sport was born. Because of this, I have 2 children who play rugby at the national level. One is Charity Williams for Team Canada. She's a 3-time Olympian and a 2-time medalist. And my other daughter is Faith Williams, who plays for Team Jamaica. And I want to thank the people who are behind me. I'm not sure who they are, but whoever's involved in making this happen, I want to thank you. I especially also want to thank Aiden, who has been on this journey with us for the past, I would say, between 8 and 9 years. He was the one person that we hounded for a long time, and he worked with us in a lot of meetings, and he believed in us, and he believed in this dream that equitable access needed to happen, and it needed to happen in these priority communities where we're seeing, revitalization is wonderful, but with that, brings wonderful facilities, and unfortunately, people who don't necessarily need to use these facilities use them. So with this early registration, and I'm sure everyone knows how it works, is these families can register up to 7 days prior to the registration opening up to the wider city. And this allows access. This allows our children to get into the swimming lessons, to get into gymnastics, the soccer, all the programs that are essential to raise and to build healthy children and healthy parents. So, this is something that I know, it might not be really important to a lot of people, but I think if we look at, how society is going, how, we have, especially our young girls who aren't so much involved in sport, this is opening up opportunities for them. It's opening up doors, and we have to look, at the future of what's happening with our children, especially, with this, the internet and social media. It's so important that our children have access to sport, and have access to programming that is needed. So I just want to thank everyone, who's been involved in this fight. It's been a long fight. And to see that we have, all, 37 or 38 recreation centers across the city that can benefit from this, early registration, I think it's important. Please take this into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? No, thank you, and thank you for raising your voice on this early. The next speaker is Hani Afra. Welcome to committee. You have 5 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you.
Make sure that the light is green on your microphone.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Dear City Council member, I'm here today to support the expand early registration access in our community. For nearly 9 years, we advocated for access to recreational at Regent Park. The reason we advocated is because in 2011, our aquatic center was built, and it attracted a lot of residents outside of the community because of beauty, and also it was a free access for the whole Toronto. Our community was not able to access it because of a lot of the people in the community were immigrant or low-income family. They were not able to have fast internet or able to have electronics. So we start lining up at Wallace Lake Community Center, 2 a.m. in the morning, and sometimes I line up 2 a.m. and I would not be able to get it. And because of my safety and sometimes my kids would come with me, just they wanted to support and experience that feeling of lining up. It was unsafe for no one. And we start advocating in the community and came together and talked to Paul McConnell, said this is what we're dealing with. Our community center is built for the community, but yet we feel alienated, like we're not using the center. We'll see like people from outside the community with fancy cars coming to the aquatic center and using it, and our kids don't know how to swim, how to use the community because we're not able to access it. She listened to us. She said, okay, I'll do my best. And then after that, there was a Kristen Wontan also. We said the same thing to her. We said we're not able to use it because we don't have fast computers. We don't have a lot of electronics. Chris was I was sitting here and she was one of the people that was looking straight at me and listening to me, and I was just saying from the bottom of my heart, I'm a single mom. That time I had 2 children that I was trying to register. And she came to us, to our group, listen, everyone in the group. And we told from our heart that this is what's happening. We're not able to use it. And we only were able to use it Saturdays. Paul McConnell helped us to get women only. And our kids were not safe in the water. They didn't know what to do. We didn't know what to do because we also learning how to swim. Like myself, I'm an immigrant. I came here for a better future. So we all struggling in Saturdays, having fun, but struggling in the water. Krista one time said, I'll do my best, but I cannot promise anything. We came here, we debuted, and then after that, we had Chris Moyes also. We told him the same story again. And they all listened to us and said, we'll do the best we can. And I never give up. I always said, you know what, something will come out. I think that when Chris Moyes came, it was like we were advocating for 6 years. And then we got the pilot project finally. That was like amazing. My kids were not in it because they were going to French immersion that time. I was like, what? My kids not gonna be able to join? Mm-hmm. And I was like, you know what? Other kids are inside at least. My kids are like, I'm lining up 2 a.m. still, getting my kids here and there. They finished all levels, thank God. And my other kids, my 11-year-old now, she's ultra 6. She has a learning disabilities, but she loves water. And all she says when people say to her, you can't do this, you can't do it, she says, I know how to swim better than you. So it's really, really good to see kids are really learning, and they're in the swimming pool. The kids know each other. Like, my kids used to feel they don't belong there because they would swim people who are privileged. But now my 11-year-old swims with her grade level, like her classmates. They see in the swimming. Now she goes by herself with her friends to deep end. I don't have to worry about them. So it's really exciting to see that. So thank you all. Chris Moyes, Chris Wontan not here. Olivia Chow, I'm happy with you did, but I wish that you guys expanded to other programs, not only swimming camps, please. And also for the Toronto, Greater Toronto. This is amazing, so I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Questions of staff? We have, question of the debutant. Could you,
Thank you.
Councilor Moyes would like to ask you. Yeah, we can hire you.
Thank you so much for coming in today to the Pew.
Thank you.
It was a heartfelt remarks. So do you feel that the early registration has actually improved in the last few years?
It did improve a lot. So I don't have to line up 2 a.m. anymore.
That's good. And is there any recommendations for improvement on the program so far?
Yes, please. I was mentioning, like, my kids now, thank God, they're good into swimming. My 5-year-old feels lovely in the swimming pool, but he wants to get into soccer. He wants to get into other programs, but we can't. So if you can expand the program, that would be great.
Okay. Good to noted.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris Moyes.
Thank you. And the final speaker is Waleed Kogali Ali, online. Welcome to committee. You have 5 minutes.
Good morning, folks. Just want to start off by thanking members of the Access to Recreation in the room, Hani, Sugar, and the previous speaker. And just also reference something important related to the previous item with regards to the shelter system. I hope that the city will pass a resolution to implement a moratorium on evictions from social housing.
I'm just going to pause your time. Deputations are only for the item that's before us.
I understand that. I'm just speaking to that, but it's connected. So I wish for that to have happened because I think it had an impact on the shelter system. But I'm here to speak today in support of item 2026-28.5, which is the early local registration expansion update and outcomes. And I just want to again reiterate the years of advocacy from the grassroots group Access to Recreation, which I'm a member of, which has worked tirelessly to make local recreation programs more accessible, equitable, and responsive to the needs of families across Toronto. For years, one of the clearest and most urgent priorities raised by parents, caregivers, youth, and community advocates was the need of priority access to local registration programs. That goal is now reflected in what the city calls early local registration. This is a meaningful step forward. For many families, recreation is not a luxury. It's essential infrastructure. It supports physical health, mental health, youth development, community safety, social connection, and a sense of belonging. When children and youth have access to sports, arts, after-school programs, leadership opportunities, and community programming, they are building confidence, friendship, skills, and healthier futures. But for too long, access to these programs was not equal. Many parents could not get their children into programs because the registration system itself created created barriers. Specifically, families who had flexible work schedules, reliable internet, credit card, strong English language skills, or the ability to sit online the moment registration opened were more likely to secure spots. Meanwhile, many working class families, newcomer families, Black and racialized families, families living in Toronto community housing, families without stable internet access, and parents working shift jobs were often left behind. I've heard from parents who tried year after year to register their children only to find that programs were full within minutes. I've heard from caregivers who felt defeated before they even had a fair chance. And I've heard from families who felt that local community centers were not only truly accessible to the very residents they were meant to serve. That is why this important early local registration matters. It recognizes that fairness does not always mean treating everyone exactly the same. Sometimes fairness means removing barriers so that families who have historically been excluded have a real opportunity to participate. This initiative gives local families a better chance to access local programs in their own neighborhoods. It helps ensures that community centers reflect the communities they are located in. It tells parents and children, you belong here. And that sense of belonging is powerful. When families see themselves reflected in their community spaces, trust grows. When children can participate in programs close to home, neighborhoods become stronger. When parents know their children have safe, positive, affordable activities, it reduces stress and supports family well-being. I want to commend city staff and council for moving this work forward. The implementation of early local registration is a direct response to years of community advocacy. But we also be honest, implementation is only the beginning. To know whether this program is truly reaching the families it was designed to support, the city must collect and report disaggregated race-based and equity-based data. We need to understand who's participating, who is still being left out, and where the barriers remain. That means collecting data on registration outcomes, wait lists, participation rates, neighborhood access, and the experiences of families facing systemic barriers. This should include not just race-based data, but income-related indicators, disability, newcomer status, where appropriate, language access, age, gender, and geography, while respecting privacy and community trust. Without this data, we are left guessing. I just want to conclude by referencing an important piece. Every child in the city deserves access to recreation, regardless of their postal code, family income, race, immigration status, language, and whether their parents can refresh a web page at exactly the right second. This initiative is already making a difference. Families have shared that they feel seen, valued, and included. And so today I urge this committee to do three things. First, continue supporting and expanding early local registration across Toronto. Second, ensure that implementation includes strong outreach, multilingual communication, digital access supports, and community-based assistance for families who face barriers. And thirdly, require the collection and public reporting of disaggregated race-based and equity-based data so the city can measure what this program.
So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bravo. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Questions of the deputant? Oh, questions of staff. Sorry. Yeah, I have to do that. Questions of staff. Councillor Moyes and then Councillor Carroll. Go ahead.
Thank you.
And Councillor Shen.
Thank you. One of the deputants, Hanny, mentioned that the early registration only applies to swimming. Is that correct? And if so, why is it? If so, do we have plans to expand into other programs as well?
Chair, good morning. Aiden Sarofzadeh here from Parks and Recreation. Councillor, that is not correct. It is correct in the case of the Pam McConnell Aquatic Centre because it is a standalone aquatic centre. However, the program applies to all 37 locations across the city that are free centres, some of which include things like swimming pools, gyms, et cetera, and they would include your typical indoor sports programs as well.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, so thank you for the clarification. Can you maybe talk about some of the successes we've had maybe across the system? I mean, I'm biased to ask you about Toronto Centre, but I won't do that at this table. Perhaps you could maybe share some of the data around the before and after when it comes to percentages and the increase around the city.
Chair, Terry Ricketts, Parks and Rec. So two main statistics we're pleased to report. One, local registered clients increased from 36% to 65% over the course of the pilot to date, and clients from lower income areas increased from 57% to 65%.
Great. So I know the pilot started in Toronto Centre. Is it now going to be a permanent process, or is it still on the pilot stage?
Chair, this program is now going to go into sustainment, so it will continue indefinitely unless council decides to make a change.
And you'll continue to assess and the success of it, and perhaps make amendments or adjustments where needed over time?
Chair, our monitoring is going to be ongoing, and adjustments will be made as required at the local level from a program delivery perspective, through engagement, et cetera.
And just one final question. In regards to where these centers are located, I think it's 37 and 18 wards, I believe. Are you working with the local councillor to ensure the continued success of the program?
Chair, yes, that is the case. We've consulted to date and continue to consult with all 18 councillors who have free centres in their wards, as well as 3 councillors who have residents that attend free centres or are within catchments.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Questions, Councillor Carroll?
Yes, my questions come from my experience around Oriole Centre. And we're getting questions from people who are now not able to access the program. So the outside area people coming into the free center, we're in the 65% range, and that's cut in half now. But the question arises then, how are we evaluating where we can deal with that unmet need? I've talked to both types, people who are upset. I live outside that community center's catchment area, but I like that program. I can afford to go anywhere, but that program isn't offered at the center closer to my home. And also people who, while they were coming from outside of area, it was because they couldn't afford a fee-for-service. So what are we doing to monitor the unmet needs so that while we get this going, and the local approach is very much appreciated in this center, but what are we doing to make sure that the offerings in our fee-for-service centers are keeping pace so that you have a fee-for-service option?
Chair, there's 3 ways, I'd say primarily 3 ways in which we're addressing those concerns. First of all, we're for those individuals from outside the catchment who are struggling with affordability of those programs, we're promoting the welcome policy. Secondly, we're working with folks who are having trouble locating the programs they want one-on-one, which we've seen quite a bit of success with. And then we're also increasing we're looking at it, we are increasing the number of drop-in programs and also the size of drop-in programs in areas where we're seeing extra strain and demand to try to meet that need.
Okay. And in terms of promoting the welcome policy, there was a point at which it was our annual obsession, and that sort of generated media around it. But I think, having this, robust map of free centers kind of took the pressure away. And now I think you're right. A lot of people, if I can access it here, they've gotten away from the idea of exercising their welcome letter abilities. How are we promoting that? Is that casework? How are we getting the word out there that that's still an option for you in any center?
Chair, thanks for the question, Councillor. The ecosystem of service delivery here in the City of Toronto from a subsidy perspective is vast. Mm-hmm. Welcome policy is one of those streams. Yeah. We have a network of outreach workers and investing in family staff on the ground working with families in need. Okay. We partner with our other divisions, other partners to get the word out, and we have, tons of materials that go out every year to those families who may need welcome policy to participate.
Okay, great. And then one more question, Madam Chair. That just leaves us with seniors, and the feedback is I'm most often hearing it from seniors. I like going to that center because I was going there for yoga, and I like that lady. or is there a band of seniors drop in, and is it touching on physical activity, not just the garden variety cultural groups that we have in every community center out where I represent? They're there and they're great, but are we making sure that we're matching physical activities for seniors from the free center out to the other centers?
Chair, we are. I think, Councillor, you're speaking about a service planning and a program mix topic, which is an ongoing issue for many of our communities as the dynamics in those communities change. This particular energy has shifted some of the participation into other centers, where my team is now looking at shifting programming into those centers where previously the demand didn't exist for those programs. So it's a bit of a fluid and quarterly exercise that my team does to inject those services into those communities as they become more popular.
Okay, so there are eyes on it. That's what I'm getting at. That shift is being, you've got eyes on it, and they're addressing it as needed.
Through the chair, certainly.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And now we go to questions from Councillor Shen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks to all the staff who worked on this, and great to see the progress. I just want to start off by asking, what was the rationale for making these 37 centers free?
Chair, this exercise was done in 2012. It was a location-based evaluation of where these centers are compared to low-income communities. The rationale was to provide local access to free programs for those communities that need it the most. This evaluation is to be done regularly. Unfortunately, we were hard-pressed to do this during the pandemic, so our next evaluation will actually be coming up in 2027 into 2028.
Okay, so that's good, because my concern also revolved around changing demographics and changing neighborhoods. So my next question, because these were decided to be free programs based on the surrounding areas and the local population, how do these boundaries, what's the avenue to change any of these boundaries or expand or shift them around these centers, around which area is covered? What would the process be, and when do they get done?
Through the chair, thank you for the question, Councillor. So if you're speaking about the catchment areas around free centers, you're going to re-examine those every 5 years, just like we're looking at the policies for free centers themselves, to respond to changing socioeconomic conditions and population.
And when would that 5-year mark come for this review, for this current centers and the bound maps or catchment areas?
In 2027.
2027. And Councillor Carroll asked my questions around welcome policy, and one of the challenges is that it is not necessarily known or used, or even with the staff members. So what kind of training has been provided to the frontline staff at all of these centers around welcome policy as a proactive way of promoting it, as opposed to being brought in?
Chair, all of our staff promote welcome policy. Granted, I will admit that some likely do it better than others, so we will continue to do better. Having said that, we also have, as I mentioned earlier, a network of outreach staff who work with agencies, partners, communities themselves to promote the welcome policy availability and provide information on how eligibility works.
So while this model works really well compared to what we had, the free centers were created for the neighborhoods that are around those centers, so it's best to serve those communities first. Is there any other models added to this that's being explored? Like, for example, within the same neighborhood, we have in certain areas like the biggest economic disparity within a catchment area. So when free programs are intended to be for communities that they can't afford, is there any other thinking that's happening around making reviewing this model to make it even more accessible?
To the chair, at the moment we're still mid pilot. We will see the last two free centers on early local registration this summer, so we'll be complete by fall and evaluating. But I do give credence to what you're saying. We notice that in a number of locations because Toronto is so very diversified that even in communities surrounding free centers, there is a variety of income levels. So we are aware of that, and future iterations will consider what can be done.
My last set of questions is around concerns that have been raised from both ends. One side, the concern by folks who have not been able to access the free program because they live outside have raised concern around attendance, and obviously people in low-income situations have multiple things that may come up that may prevent them from continuing or participating in programs as well. Has attendance been monitored? And then the other part of the concern is also from people who are in the community, that there are people who might be altering addresses and so on, and has there been some sort of a way in which that's been evaluated? Not to be very punitive and surveillance based, but is there some sort of a verification process that is empathetic and human compassionate kind of way to do this in a way that also still serves the purpose of verifying to make sure that the community accessing it is from the neighborhood?
Last question.
That's it. That's all my
To
questions.
the speaker, thank you for the question. So I will speak to the changing addresses first, I think. So you're correct in that what the data shows us is that we have a higher rate of addresses changes with this program as compared to registrations in past years, in fact, 4 times higher. So even though it's a relatively small proportion that we're seeing these address changes, it's still higher than we would expect. So we're taking an education first approach right now. We're reaching out to folks and they are either verifying their address or in some cases we have a conversation about the intent of the program. In future years, we're looking at technological tools that might be able to interrupt those patterns, but we haven't settled on anything final yet. We're still exploring what could happen. In terms of the other question you asked about folks who have been displaced because of this program, again, we're really looking at working with them one-on-one, promoting the welcome policy, bringing it to their attention, and expanding programs where we can to meet that unmet need. And to a reasonable extent, we're having success with that as we work with folks individually.
Thank you. Any other questions of staff? I have a couple questions. Just to pick up on the catchment area set of questions, I assume that these that you're using a range of indices to make sure that you understand that you're constantly reviewing as staff what those might look like as new information comes in. Number one, and number two, if the catchment areas are expanded or changed, does that dilute the impact of the intervention? And I say this as a counselor that doesn't have one of these centers in Davenport.
To the chair, I'm going to start with the second part of your question about the dilution. So you're quite correct. If we expand the catchment areas such that they blend with one another, then you start to lose the effect of early local registration. Right now, we're taking a citywide approach, data informed, to set those catchment areas. So exclusively from a ward perspective, sometimes it doesn't look quite right, but when then you widen your lens to a city perspective and you can see it's really serving the people, that's how the catchments have been designed. And then I would refer to my colleague the question about indices.
Sorry? Can you repeat the question? To the chair, could you repeat the question, please?
That you're constantly factoring in and reviewing data as new information comes. So we have a new census this year. Will provide a lot more granularity, et cetera, and then plus they're potentially layering other forms of data that we're collecting.
Yes, to the chair. Thank you so much for the question. Yes, indeed, we are monitoring, and we've been going through the catchment development sort of in a phased approach, which has allowed us sort of to refine and build on the evaluation results. And the intent would be to look at any sort of changes due to population growth or socioeconomic changes at the same time that we look at the free center designation review in late 2027.
Right, so it's a multi-dimensional kind of thing to consider.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're looking at several factors, income among others.
Great. The second question in relation to data, one of the deputants raised that there wasn't enough data being captured and that there should be more. Can you comment on whether the city is, or the Parks and Recreation Division is capturing the data that we are legally allowed to collect? Are we going all the way there, or are we holding back?
To the chair, we've been in active discussions with our legal counsel about additional sociodemographic data that we can collect via our registration and booking system. And the advice we've received is that to be in line with MFIPA, the Freedom of Information and Privacy Protection Act, we are actually collecting the most that we can at the moment for broad data collection across all of our registered clients. We continue conversations with them, but it sounds like it's a little bit restrictive in collecting that additional equity-based information in the registration and booking system. However, we do collect those types of variables in our surveys to understand the impact of the programs.
Okay, so I'm capturing here that there are surveys that provide sort of qualitative and quantitative data. There is information that we understand from like census-based information, including income, to understand the area, but that we would be violating people's protected rights as set out in the legislation. So that is where we are right now with data collection. Thank you very much. Any other questions? No. Now to speak, Councillor Moise and then Councillor Shan.
Yes, thank you, staff, for this comprehensive report. You know, the pilot project actually started early, the pilot early local registration actually started in Toronto Centre. And so in 2024, and you know, you heard from the deputants, after many, many years, it finally happened. Of course, with support from me. But again, it was a true partnership trying to get this done. Some of the stats I had before me, for example, for Toronto Centre, Pat McConnell local access, is since the pilot, it's gone from 36% to 71%. Regent Park Community Centre from 46% to 68%, and Wellesley Community Centre from 56% to 85%. So that's extraordinary. Those are extraordinary numbers, and it just warms my heart to see that happening. And for the program to expand across 18 wards now in 37 centers, that's just incredible. And so thank you, staff, for this work. I look forward to continue to partner with you and the community to make sure that the program remains viable and successful. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think no other speakers. Oh, sorry. I keep, you know, when people are online, you're still very valuable to all of us here in the committee room. Councillor Shan to speak.
Totally understandable. Thank you, Chair Bravo. I just want to thank the staff who supported this process. This has been a long time advocacy point for many of us. When the programs were made free for a particular neighborhood, it was based on the demographics and the needs of the neighborhood. And so it totally made sense that the people in those neighborhoods benefited from those free programs. But as I mentioned, one of the things that we are starting to think about through this pilot is that when you have a map, and many of our maps in many of our wards that are large, we know that income disparities is huge. So technically, free programs may benefit those who live and can be able to pay, but are also interested in paying, but the programs are free, which is not a bad thing, because it's part of building a community that people from different parts of the neighborhood can come and play together and build relationships. So it's not necessarily a bad thing that we have mixed income folks in from the certain neighborhoods that are in programs together. I do think that that the changes to some of the catchment areas, some of them are defined by neighborhoods that are named as neighborhoods by the City of Toronto, as opposed to looking at maps of disparities and where the centers are located. So for example, in Malvern, when you say Malvern Community Recreation Center, the entire Malvern gets saved, but some parts of Malvern might be more closer to Burroughs Hall Community Center. Some parts of Morningside Heights, which is a different neighborhood, is close to a Malvern Community Rec Center. So these neighborhood boundaries also could be limiting. So it's important to kind of revisit this a little bit. Welcome policy, I do have a lot of anecdotal experiences of people who are not being able to fully be supported in that situation. So I understand that, as the staff mentioned, some do it better than the others. But if you can elevate the standard of how care is being used around, how we promote, support people and encourage them to use welcome policy if it's applicable to them, that would be helpful. I do think that the address verification process, particularly in Malvern, for example, there is a need to figure out a way to strengthen that in a compassionate way through education, through engagement, through supportive work, whatever may be. But it's important to address that and to look at attendance rates to see if programs are successful, if they have certain issues and what wait list processes are and so on. So it's important to also have vibrant programs in these spaces. The last thing I would say is that I know in the pilot, early part of the pilot, have quite a significant amount of resources put into outreach and promotion and so on. And over time, I know that that same level of resources may not be there. So to build structurally things like, working together with school board in a formal way to have a calendar that's shared to those schools in the area. Now we do it as an outreach mechanism, but if it can be structured in certain ways that the community gets this information ahead and the registration numbers go up as well. And looking at this program, hopefully, ideally, in my view, ideally, recreation is a social determinant of health and should be free and should be accessible for more people than what we do beyond the use of fees. But I think this is a great first step, and I thank the staff for persevering through this process. And I'm glad that we almost all the centers are now in this pilot. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? I think we'll leave it at that, and just to thank staff for your excellent work on this. This is a real progress, and to recognize that if it hadn't been for all of that advocacy out of Regent Park for so many years and the social development goals to which we've committed, particularly through the redevelopment and all of the phases, every good policy comes from the real experience of people on the ground. And that is, I think, something that we can do over time in local government. Change does take time, but the work that the deputants have done, the community advocates, and many people across the city and city staff, councillors championing, amounts to better outcomes for people. Learning how to swim is life-saving. Being able to participate in recreation is important. The athletics for health and the connection. And it should not be that a program that has been designed to serve people in a particular way is undone because others have access to 3 tablets and 2 computers. I think that this is really great work. And as we heard from staff, there is a constant rethinking and use of data to inform how this will have the maximum impact for the greatest number of people who are the intended designates of this support. So on the item, all those in favor, opposed, that's carried, and that takes us to our final item, EC 28.6, access to outdoor ovens in parks, progress update. And the first deputant I'm going to call is Jode Roberts. Is Jode online? Okay, we'll call that name. Oh, you're here, sorry. Yes, I recognize you from online before. Welcome to committee, you have 5 minutes. Yes, it should be green. You have to press, it's
Now it's green.
absolutely, go
All
ahead.
right. Thank you. My name is Jode Roberts. I'm with the Friends of Christie Pitts Park. Have been part of that group for about 15 years. And I'll be telling a bit of a personal story that seems a little indulgent given the weight and the import of all the rest of the issues you've been dealing with. So hooray, and the last deputant was very inspirational. Last week, someone shared a photo of me with a fresh slice of pizza from the Christie Pitts wood oven. It was one of the first times I'd helped use the oven for a community event. And what was most notable for me and my vanity was I had no gray hair, and my son was in a stroller. My son is going to college next year, and you may, well, anyways. So I've been at this a while. Invested in the wood oven in Christie Pitts Park and found out there's other ovens throughout the city. So realized that it's an opportunity to engage community, provide food, bring a little joy. Since those first make your own pizza nights at Christie Pitts, I've helped host dozens of pizza nights, workshops, and community events using this oven and other ovens. And unless you've spent time at these events, it might not be obvious how much work it is to create magic with a wood oven. Promoting the event, finding reliable volunteers, purchasing and preparing the food, setting up the event takes many volunteer hours to make things happen. And getting a wood oven started is not like when my wife asks me to start the barbecue in the backyard. It takes hours to start a fire and get it up to the temperature needed for baking or cooking pizza. When I began on this journey with wood ovens, which is still a strange thing to say, the city had just begun charging fees for its use. The Recreation Department had just stopped providing staff to help with the ovens in various parks. And since then, I've continued to be an advocate for using these ovens to make magic happen in Christie Pitts and other parks. I think this is my 4th deputation, so you may recognize me. The bureaucracy has been a bit baffling at times as park supers and supervisors and staff would change, and the permits process became more rigid and expensive. It's been kind of like Groundhog Day at times for many of us, bringing each new staff person and new regime up to speed on these strange and wonderful city artifacts, and trying to ensure that our groups are able to use them with minimal cost and the most efficient process. Interestingly, I checked last year, and the total number of Parks and Rec staff that I've been email corresponding with over that time is 31 different staff. So thank you to all the staff that have listened to us over time. And responded. Our area alone has had 6 park supervisors in the last 8 years, and those staff have periodically tried to sort things out and make things easier for the community organizers like myself. It's often seemed that the boxes that staff were keen to check were not necessarily the boxes the community wanted checked in the first place. And that showed to me that senior staff within Parks, Forestry, Rec weren't always listening as closely to the needs of the community. But the good news is that with today's proposed changes, 2 of the most important boxes for community organizers, like myself and the others listed in the report, are being checked. So no fees and insurance costs and streamlined permits. So hurrah. Given how quirky wood ovens are as a city asset, it's not surprising there have been misunderstandings and friction as we try and figure out how to use these things efficiently and effectively. And I'm sure this probably won't be the last time I'll be here for these purposes, but I will continue because I see it as an incredibly valuable resource. And we're grateful for the steps that are being brought forward today and look forward to making magic happen this summer and beyond. And I have more time, so I'm going to thank the OG wood oven heroes in Toronto. Toronto, famous for raccoons and ravines. I would argue wood ovens could be one of those weird things that Toronto is, a little famous for. And some of the people that helped make this magic happen: Yuta Mason in Dufferin Grove Park, Sean Braithwaite in Regent Park, Sabina Ali in Thorncliffe, and a ton of others. So thank you to all of them. They're heroes of mine, and they should be heroes to their communities. They've given countless hours and inspiration and brought joy and good food to Toronto's parks. So in short, thank you, and I'll see you at the wood ovens hopefully this summer.
Thank you. I'll ask you a couple of questions. I think we interacted in a previous iteration of this report when it went back to staff, and now we're hearing good words from you about where we are. In terms of how how this works. And you talked about the OGs, and we've called them oven champions, but can you comment a bit on what kind of commitment it requires from community and the spark that you've seen, how this has worked, where the energy and the support has come from?
I think one of the struggles to satisfy the needs of the different communities with all these parks, like in very different neighborhoods, Regent Park, Thorncliffe, Dufferin Grove, Christie Pitts. It's been a struggle for staff to support the very different and nuanced needs of those groups, and some are bigger groups. The Friends of Christie Pitts functionally is me and Monica, and whoever else will help volunteer with us. So some groups are more structured. The Friends of Soren Park have farmers markets every week, and they use the wood oven to create pizza. Sabina Ali in RV Burgess Park, has probably been here many times, and is a legend because she and her group have created a tandoor oven that takes a lot of energy. They pull it out and they use that at night markets. So each of the groups have very different needs. I think there remains needs for training of people using the wood ovens as these become hopefully more popular things to be used by the public and these groups. We need more training to ensure everyone's using them properly. But that's by removing the permitting fees, the insurance, and streamlining the process, it's really reduced the burden and some of the friction for the groups using those ovens. We still have costs related to all the preparation and making food, but this has been helpful to get here. And this started in 2024 in July, so it's been an almost 2-year process to get from us asking for these things to this happening. So we're grateful that it's finally happened, and thankfully we're all persistent like the rest of the people in this room.
Well, as you can hear from the previous item, this is like breakneck speed, just 2 years. So we did bring it back to improve it. But so you've talked about how there's a need for staff to understand the park oven group and support. But if, for example, Sabina, they do more than just do the oven there, the night market, the trainings, the support from Thorncliffe Neighborhood Office. It does come like from a bottom up, and that's, like you said, a very different neighborhood than Dufferin Grove. Yep. What is the role that you see for community members? How essential are they in making sure that these ovens work?
Yeah, as I mentioned, Recreation used to provide staff that would help light the ovens, like the 2 or 3 hours it takes to light the ovens. And sometimes staff, and still sometimes staff, are usually rec staff, are assisting with creating the pizzas and the things that come out of them for camps and other purposes. But that's largely absent from the rest of the places we have parks. So it's entirely dependent on these groups to come up with the idea to purchase all of the resources to make pizza or naan or whatever the items are, and then line up volunteers to do the organization, to do the promotion of the events. And so there's a ton of work, and it's all borne by these community groups. So this removing the permit and the insurance and streamlining the process is helpful. It doesn't remove the ton of work that these community members, often unpaid or mostly unpaid, are doing. Right. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, I'm just saying there's sweat equity from the community to actually make it work, and what this report does is get out of the way and find better ways to support that and recognize the capacity in the community building and community development work that happens in these parks. So
yeah, that's what I should have said.
Yeah, okay, cool. Thank you. Any other questions? So the next speaker, welcome Shauna Kearns, and you have 5 minutes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shauna Kearns, and I'm here representing Second Rise, a social enterprise that provides supportive employment services to people facing barriers. I'm the lead facilitator and co-founder. I work alongside the Second Rise Advisory Committee. Together, we set the strategic direction for the organization and explore how Indigenous and non-Indigenous people work together and towards reconciliation. I've been involved with the outdoor ovens in Toronto since 2013. I first heard about the Dufferin Grove oven, a community oven that I would go on to hear about for years to come from masons, bakers, and community members internationally. For those who don't know, the Dufferin Grove oven, built by master oven builder Alan Scott in the 90s, has been a model for parks and community ovens across North America. I lived in the US for a number of years, and constantly, like, my work revolved around these wood-fired ovens, and I would frequently be asked about the Dufferin Grove oven in Toronto, which made me feel very proud. I moved back to Toronto in 2020 after having lived in Pittsburgh for almost a decade, building ovens and job training programs. Over the last 6 years, I've used the ovens in Alexandra Park, Fairmont, Sororin, Christie Pitts, Dufferin Grove, and Witchwood. We've used the ovens to host bannock making workshops for community members, pizza nights for newcomer youth cooking programs, and tenants of a community land trust at the Fairmont Oven, non-night in Christie Pitts, oven training workshops for city staff in Dufferin Grove, the list goes on. This summer, Second Rise will host a job training pilot in city ovens, and the proposed changes to the oven policies would allow us to deliver our programming to more individuals with fewer barriers. I see so much value in making these ovens more accessible to more people. They are extremely powerful community building tools that are right now underutilized. Listening to the other issues discussed today, I'm aware of much more pressing issues that residents face, like homelessness and access to rec programs. But I think it's worth mentioning that places like the city ovens are spaces where people from very different backgrounds can eat together, share space, and connect. Building these connections feels more important than ever. These relationships help us become more engaged, informed, and empathetic community members. I'm therefore glad to see the city open to embracing policy changes that make the ovens more accessible. However, with these changes, I, like Jode, want to emphasize the need to provide training opportunities for community members, whether it's local organizations or the public, so that more people can learn to use the ovens safely and with confidence. This is a process Second Rise and others are keen and positioned to support. Lastly, I want to express gratitude to Yuta Mason in Dufferin Grove, Herman Ellis and Katie McLeod at Scadding Court and Alexandra Park, Jode Roberts and Christie Pitts, and Sabina Ali in Thorncliffe Park, who've mentored, inspired, and or removed barriers to access for various ovens, and in many ways have paved the way for these changes that have been proposed today. Thank you also to Shawit, Kelly, and Councillor Bravo at the city for listening and championing these changes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? I just wanted to thank you for coming to committee and for shouting out all of the champions by name. That way I don't have to. And for highlighting the importance of the local people that make this happen. Thank you so much. On any questions of staff? Yes, Councillor Moyes.
Thank you. And again, this program is amazing. And of course, I have one in Regent Park. Looking at the year-to-year, there is some substantive increase in some of these areas. For example, Christie Pitts, in 2020, well, I went from 2023, 17, 2024, 30, 2025, 50. Dufferin Grove, 4 to 29. But in Regent Park, for example, though, it really hasn't really had a lot of movements. In 2023, it was 18, then 24, 14, 2025, 22. What can we do to perhaps increase the usage of this of these ovens?
Through the chair, thank you for that question. And you're correct. The usage rates vary from park to park. We are anticipating, and what we heard back from the oven champions was that relieving the financial burdens and the administrative burdens that were affecting people's ability to use the ovens will be a valuable way of increasing use starting this season. So for example, before you had to bring all of your own equipment, the pizza peel and the various types of equipment that you would need to operate the oven. So we've now made sure that every oven has its own set of tools, and we are upgrading and renewing the training video on how to use the ovens, featuring community members so that it, it really resembles what it would be like to operate an oven. And we're going to be providing information to all councillors' offices so that you can increase awareness among your constituents about the availability of these ovens. Before, you kind of had to know about them in order to register, but now you can book the oven online in a frictionless way. As Jode was saying, there's less friction. And we've also spent time working with the Parks and Recreation staff to train them up on the use of the ovens, and we're anticipating that that will result in higher levels of use in all of the parks this summer.
Great. And then will the report comes back this committee for an update in 2027, I guess, at this point, for 2026?
We can do that.
Okay. And just one final question. The last deputant, Shauna, mentioned Indigenous people and the use of the ovens, which I really appreciate because I actually didn't think about it. What steps are we taking to make sure that they have access to these types of ovens?
Through the chair, we're going to continue to work with the community members who know how to animate these ovens, and Shauna's group is an important one. Also, through our reconciliation efforts, we will be working with Indigenous service organizations to make sure that they're also aware of the opportunity for community groups to book the ovens to use.
And just one final question. The local councillors, are they assisting or have opportunity to perhaps provide input to help this be successful?
We'd love that to happen.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff to speak? Any speakers? I will speak to say, well, Dufferin Grove, the original oven, is in Davenport, and I lived in that neighborhood in the 90s and saw the amazing transformation, that the spark of everything that was happening in that park, led by Utah, Mason, and other residents, the oven was just an expression of so much other work that I think comes alongside of seeing a park that was not what it is today, and building relationships and using their own energy to bring forward a series of activities that have made it such a wonderful park. It's a real privilege to represent that area. I really want to thank both the oven champions and the park staff. Parks staff listened when the voices were raised about what was needed. When the report initially came, it wasn't quite what was required to ensure that we're meeting the goals that have been supported by oven champions today, and which you've heard in answers to questions of staff. I think this is a wonderful approach to working and listening, and for me it was a privilege to work with the city staff on this thoughtfully. And thank you for the oven champions. We convened a meeting. We kind of got to the nub of it, which is make it easier to sign up, ensure that the costs were lessened, and that there were some enabling tools. But really, it's the energy of the local champions who have taken up this incredible amount of work that provides a wonderful amenity and convening opportunity. There's nothing like eating the pizza together at the end of this long process for creating wonderful bonds. The continual listening to the champions, I think, is something that you heard from staff. And this kind of community building is really only possible when there's a commitment at the city to think about community members as assets, not as impediments or pains. It's actually just to value everything that you do. So thank you again to both staff and to the community members that have come forward with your expertise and have raised your voice in one way. And you can see that the diversity of the parks that have ovens is the income levels are different, the profile of the community is different, the built form from a tower community to very like houses and residential streets. This is a wonderful example of something that can happen in the city of Toronto. So with that, seeing no other speakers on the item, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And this seems like a good time to break. Oh, sorry, we have one more item. Not on the top of my game today. This one is the letter. The letter from Deputy Mayor Malik. You saw it's been circulated on CMP. Are there questions of staff to speak? Deputy Mayor Malik.
Thank you very much. I'll be very brief. I put forward a motion to bring together important stakeholders in the neighborhood and the leadership of Walk of Fame alongside our Toronto Downtown West BIA, the Mirvish group, and residents and local businesses so that we can explore an exciting and I think very appropriate activation, reactivation of David Pico Square to meet and match the success of our King Street transit corridor and the increased activity and development that's happening in that neighborhood to make sure it's a place that people can stay, enjoy, support local businesses, and also be a great place to call home. Thank you.
Thank you. On the item, all those in favor, opposed, that's carried, and that concludes our meeting. Thank you very much to members of the public, to members of staff, and all. We had 100% attendance today. Take care.
And thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilors, thank you.